Welcome to Patty's Place, a place where we will talk about grief, dementia, and caregiving. I'm your host, Lisa. I named this podcast after my mom, Pat, who died from dementia about 2 years ago. So grab your cup of tea, your cup of coffee, or if you're having a really bad day, a glass of wine, and come join us so you know that you're not alone. Today, I'm very excited about our guest. His name is Sam Simon, and his wife, Susan. He wrote the book, Dementia Man, an existential journey, choosing life and finding meaning with Alzheimer's. He also has a one-act play as well. So, Sam, welcome to Patty's Place.
Thank you very much. And it's great to be at Patty's Place.
Yes. Yeah. So I was very excited when I read your article about your one-act play and your book as well. So I don't know if people realize that Alzheimer's is the leading cause of death, and it's the only one without a cure for it. And you write in there that for those out of your book, you say, for those of some form of cognitive disease that affects the double or triple number, and then it affects 2 whole generations of society with it. For that. And you said your goal is to share your story to invite people to join a revolution.
Yes. Well, a revolution and to reimagine, if you will. Well, I have another bit of news that I've just come to realize.
Okay.
2026 is the first year that a baby boomer turns 80.
Oh, okay.
I did not know that, and until it didn't occur to me until recently. And of course, the baby boomer generation is gigantic.
Yes.
And my research is saying that in about 5 years, we'll have the largest 80-plus-year-old cohort in the history of the country. And getting prepared too, I was trying to find out, well, who was the first baby ever born? Who was the first baby boomer ever born in 1946? Because they turned 80 in 2026.
Yeah, my dad turns 80 in September. So he was born in 1946.
Well,
yeah.
There you go.
There we go. So
I found the name of it's public because she had promoted Carol. I'm looking at Carol Trackman from Richmond, Washington, who was one of the first babies born in 1946.
okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
So we are among a growing cohort of folks. It's not only age, but I was diagnosed with Alzheimer's in 2022, so I was about 79.
Okay.
I'm sorry. No. I turned 80 in 2025. So 80.
So you're in you got diagnosed in like your late 70s then. Okay.
Yeah.
So you talk about you want to be a patient cognitive voice for that. You want your work to be referred to that. Like, can you talk about that a little bit?
I want to be a voice for meaningful life with this disease.
Okay.
I want to be a counter voice to a narrative that's out there that says life with this disease is not worth living.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so many stereotypes. In fact, the word itself, dementia,
mm-hmm.
evokes end stage.
Okay.
And so much of that is out there that does that pictures a person with, quote, dementia just staring into the sky in a senior, at a very advanced stage. And when I was diagnosed, my neurologist said it could be 5 to 10 years before things got a lot worse. And, that would be, I'm trying to figure it out. If I was right, that could be by the time I'm 70, 89 or something.
I like how you wrote in your book when they tell you that 5 to 10 years, you're like, Is it from the time you noticed a symptom, or is it from the time you got a diagnosis? They don't really tell you that.
They really don't. They really don't tell you, because that is true. Because many of us don't know that we have the disease, even though we struggle with early symptoms. For me, it was driving on the wrong side of the road every once in a while. And of course, when I got alarmed by it, people would say, "Oh, don't worry, we do that too." Except I hadn't done it before, and then it happened a couple of times, and then there were other symptoms started developing. So it's really hard to know sometimes when to get help.
I want to talk about, you talk about the nothingness place. I have to tell you that when I read that, it made me want to cry, because I thought about my mom, because I always would think about how scared she must have been with that, and not knowing where she was or what was happening. Can you describe that? Because I just think it's very powerful.
So yes, and I want to mention that there is the saying that if you know one person with dementia, you know one person
Mm-hmm.
with dementia, that it is different for everybody. And I often get from people who see my show who have had a relative with the disease, say that they now think they may sense a little bit about what their loved one have been going through. I don't know that, but I will talk about
Mm-hmm.
it, because who knows?
Right.
The what was happening to me is I would be often sitting down or someplace wanting to remember something, and I would exit this world. I would all of a sudden be tumbling through infinite deep space, looking for that word or that idea or that thought, and hoping that I would get to the other side, because that's where the answer was going to be.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so real. And then I'd wake up. Then I'd be present. I don't have any sense of how long that moment was.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I sometimes think it was just a nanosecond. It was just an instant. Felt to me like forever,
Mm-hmm.
but it could have just been. Susan never mentioned that she noticed me in a trance or anything. So I don't know. We like to tell the story. When I was going through my doctor's examinations, and we were at a neurologist office, and he happened to have it was in the hospital memory center, and he had a um, intern, but doing the neurology intern in the office. And the neurology intern says, well, "Sam, was that an hallucination or was it real?" And of course, I answered, "It was real. I was real." Oh, of course I wasn't but it was so real to me that when I was asked the question, that I answered, yes, it was real. Now, the experience was real, but not, I really wasn't floating. The experience of having the hallucination was real. And it would be increasingly frequent. Medicine has put it off. I occasionally feel like I'm at the edge of the abyss, ready for it, but it's much abated, um, thanks to medicine.
You talked about that, about your process with the doctors. My mom refused to get. I tried to get her to be diagnosed. She would not go. I didn't get her. She didn't get diagnosed until it was my dad and I had to take her to the emergency room, because she didn't know who I was or my dad was. But can you talk about that a little bit? Because I understand, based on not just my mom, but my dad has had some medical issues, how frustrating that was for you, that whole process of what you went through, because it took quite a long time, even for your,
Yes.
because first you were diagnosed with the mild cognitive. Um,
Well, but even before that,
right.
I would complain to my interns
Mm-hmm.
about my memory. In fact, I will say something that I don't have the exact times, but I'll even go back further. Well, first of all, people should know, it's important to know, which I didn't realize. I have a genetic risk.
Okay.
I have one instance of the APOE4 gene, which increases your risk of Alzheimer's of 20 to 30%.
Okay.
Uh, and there's some study out if you have two from each side of your family, you should be considered to have Alzheimer's. But I didn't realize that. But I was experiencing some memory issues in the early 2000s, maybe 2009 or 10. That's a long time ago.
Yeah.
And I had an annual physical, and I still remember. Look what I did. I remember buttoning up my shirt at the end of the physical, saying, "Hey, doctor, I'm just wondering. I'm having. I think I may have a memory issue. I'm forgetting things." He says, "Oh, Sam, I know you. Now, if you couldn't remember what you had for breakfast, then I'd be worried about you." Breakfast. What did I have? And I couldn't remember back then. But what he did, because I was still working every day and was being very successful in things, he sent me to a psychologist who presumed that I was under too much stress from my running a 50-person business and
Mm-hmm.
a lot of stuff. And he gave me an antidepressant or an anti-anxiety medicine. I think I probably could have been diagnosed as amyloid positive back then. That was 20 years ago, but you
Yeah.
don't know.
Right.
And the symptoms became more acute. And when I complained to my then in 2018 or so to my internist, he said, "Oh, Sam, I wait, let me get it right down. Sam, you're just an overeducated man, overreacting to normal aging."
Mm-hmm.
But then I told him about this experience of floating into nothingness, and that's when he scheduled me for an appointment with my first neurologist.
Mm-hmm.
But it took, I mean, and when I perform and when we have these discussions with audiences, this is not unusual. So many people like shake their head. Yeah, yeah, normal aging. That's what they're telling me. Normal aging. Just get used to it. And because I didn't have anybody in my family that I knew of with a history of Alzheimer's or a cognitive disorder,
Mm-hmm.
it was presumed to be just normal aging.
I love the example you have in your book about the difference between not finding your keys for an unimpaired person like your wife and for you is that like for me or for Susan, we can retrace our steps to find the keys, but for you, you don't have a place to start at all. And that
Yeah, I want to say hello to Susan, my wife, and of
yeah.
59 years, 7 months, and 10 days.
Very good.
And now known as my cognitive navigator. But she did the research in her dad and brought that to the. So I don't know if you want to just mention that.
Yes,
The not finding, being able to retrace our steps.
Right. Yeah. That was when you performed somewhere and someone asked that question. How can you tell the difference in the audience? And there was a nurse there who gave that as the answer. And she said, this is how you can tell if it's something that is really serious or is a part of aging. And she said, if you can retrace or you can go back and remember these things, then it's part of how you're aging. Whereas when he went to look for the keys, he had no idea. And so what we had to do is develop a system. And there is a place in our kitchen that when he comes in, that he can place his keys and his wallet and have that sense to know that that's where he goes to pick them up.
So it's helpful to have a singular place to to do that stuff.
Susan, did you notice the changes in him before he did, or did he come to you with his concerns?
He came to me,
Okay.
and it is interesting. He will tell you the story. I don't know if it's in the book about that. He had another play that he was doing, and it was during COVID. And he, at that point, he had asked me, "Would you sit here with a script?"
And we're in our basement doing Zoom.
Okay.
Yeah. And I didn't know exactly why, but then as I saw him perform, and then I got to a part in the middle that he just skipped over because he didn't have the script. I had the script. And then I had to say, go back to this.
So I've been performing that play. It's about Susan, by the way, had advanced breast cancer, and the doctor said she wasn't going to survive. She did. But I've been performing Memorize for like 8-9 years, and all of a sudden I was having a hard time remembering the line. And that was, again, an early symptom. And, it's, if you do something, I know people can't remember, it was sort of radical to us. It was just, sort of a shock. We've done it so often. But again, there were other little things that we didn't talk about quite so much. But somebody would wave at me at a store, and I would wave back, but I didn't recognize them either.
Mm-hmm.
There's remembering the name, but not even knowing the face anymore. That is another scary thing that happened.
Well, I know with my mom, her and I used to go shopping all the time, and the last time we went shopping, usually like she'd go in one section, I'd go in another section, and then, we'd meet. But all of a sudden I turned around and she was like right next to me. And I realized later on she probably got disorientated or got scared and didn't know where she was. And then she found me. And so she stayed right close to me because she didn't know, where she was with that.
That would not surprise me. It's hard often to put these things into words as well, particularly, I know even now I suspect people say, oh, he doesn't have. I get that so much. They just don't know what's going on back here.
Exactly.
And it is so different, and so it can be scary. That's why, I don't travel alone anymore. We don't leave. We don't go too many places alone anymore, because for me, it's also reassuring, but it is easy to get confused.
You talk about that you want to start a movement to change how the world sees people with dementia. Can you talk about that?
Well, in so many different ways. We want to move from end stage, also, and to realize I can still be out there. We can still be in the airport together. I can still go, get to the grocery store if I want to. So knowing that we're present, we can still function. The doctor's statement 5 to 10 years. It's different for everybody. It depends on when you've been diagnosed and the like. And there are so many of us out there. I want, there is this movement, particularly in travel, to have the equivalent of ramps. So maybe the better way to make this conversation, under the ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act, we see all big businesses or larger businesses have ramps. They often, some places have even smaller desks for people who are with wheelchairs. The elevators, most all have these dots and stuff for those who can do whatever that's called. I forget.
Oh, for the Braille, for if you're blind.
Braille.
Okay.
There is nothing for somebody with a cognitive disorder.
Yeah, you're
There
right.
is nothing. In the airports in Europe, I'm going to show you, this is a lanyard.
Uh-huh.
It's, and the front says hidden disability. In Europe, airports, almost all airports have a desk with the yellow sunflowers. The people need help, they can go to the desk. I'm an advocate, and I'm also a troublemaker, but we can talk about that. But I want the ADA to apply. We can't imagine that people with a cognitive disorder can be out on their own. I can be, if need be. I could walk to our grocery store. I could be put in a cab or get in a cab occasionally, or I can still early enough to, I can still drive myself there. But I can get confused.
Right.
I can go slower. I'm slower than other people in going through the groceries. What if there in every grocery store was a line that had the yellow sunflowers, so people with a cognitive disorder would know to do that. Other people know that line might be slow.
Mm.
And there are stories of people get angry because somebody who is slow, usually from usually cognitively challenged, and they get angry.
Yes.
And so structuring it as an integral part of doing business. And in every store have a desk with the yellow flowers on top of it, not big, and somebody trained.
Definitely. Yet you talk about that cognitive navigators.
Yeah, no, that is Susan is my, and that's catching on, by the way. We have seen that being used now, apart from us, that people refer to cognitive navigation.
I think it's a wonderful idea because people don't understand, like you said, it's a hidden disability or hidden illness, I should say, because people look and they're like, oh, you look fine. They don't understand it's the brain. That
and that there are early stages.
Yes.
Again, the word I want to change. There is a movement to change. Get rid of the word dementia.
Yes.
We don't use the word retarded anymore in our common or medical languages. And we should, I have a cognitive disorder, cognitive disability, but a cognitive disorder.
Yes.
And I'm early stage, so I can do things that everybody else can do up to a point. And we keep developing new stories. But let me just try to be quick because I think this may be a good one. We get both Susan and I get a medicine now that requires an injection in 2 weeks. Some new medicines, and I get one for my triglycerides, and it's delivered. It's in ice. It has to be put in the refrigerator. One day it comes, they drop it off, I bring it into the house, I'm opening it up. I take the box out, put it down as I deal with stuff. Susan's about to leave the house. But then I look down to pick it up and it disappeared. It wasn't there anymore. And I look around, I look around the kitchen, it's gone. She's already at the car and I run out to her, Susan, get in here, help me. My medicine's disappeared.
Mm-hmm.
And you gave it to me and I put it in the refrigerator. But I didn't remember in real time.
Right.
And this is how it's different for, people just don't mind. These little big things can happen.
Mm-hmm.
And it is learning how to, and the goal is not to, put us in a memory unit right away.
Right.
Not to, in fact, the data, there was just something in this morning's newspapers, a study in Europe that shows that people who are out and about and exercise and read will have better cognitive capacity, even if you have a genetic risk. We need to be able to get out and move and be present and do things. And the world, just as we have for wheelchairs, needs to be designed to enable that.
I would definitely agree with that. What how do you feel about the advice? Because it took me a while to learn, but with my mom, I would enter her world. That helped where she wasn't so agitated. So, do you think that that is good, or do you feel like some people want to like shock the person with the cognitive disease? No, this is the reality. This is today's date or whatever. How do you feel about that?
Okay.
That's your yes and
You're at our special challenge point.
Okay.
It's called the yes anding. It's like it's an improv. So I was blessed, really. It's like things happen for a cause, but you don't know them. I happened in an unlikely way to end up doing theatrical improv.
Okay.
It's a hobby. I was professionally trained, though, by some of the best improvisers in the country. Give credit to the late Gary Austin, but in just learning how to live a life of yes anding, accept all information given, and then add to it. In this world of cognitive impairment, in dealing with somebody with that, what you just described is the issue for so many people. You cannot correct us.
Right.
Yes, and you can't say, you're wrong. This is how it is. Don't you see? Well, if they saw, they wouldn't be in this other world.
Right.
But the temptation, and Susan is, Susan is by nature, remember, we've been married a long time, is by nature a no first. It takes her a minute to, just a style, and she said, no, let's do this and that. And so it's a form of yes ending, but for her, it's a no for, not how she reacts. But if it hadn't happened quite yet, but again, it happened with that thing I forgot that I'd given it to her. But if all of a sudden I wake up and saying it's time to go to church or the Jewish synagogue, and it's Wednesday at 3 and not Friday night, she can say no, and that might be all right, or she could say, well, yeah, we got to get there on time. Today's Wednesday. Remember, how do we? And then maybe that'll help. Or a form of how do you yes and a more dramatic example of that, because we hear it now. We've been in this space for a while. Hear a lot of stories about people with advanced dementia in a private house, thinking they're not home.
Mm-hmm.
So they say, they'll tell their significant other or caregiver, let's go home. I need to go home now. To say to them, no, you're not, you're home, won't help.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah, saying yes, okay. First you got to get dressed. Okay, we're going to go. Depends on the situation. We've seen examples of somebody who walked out, side to the front, and walks back in. Sometimes they have to walk around the block. Sometimes they get in the car and drive around the block and come home. People haven't experienced to live with this. That may sound silly, but yes anding usually can resolve most things, not always. There's a woman you may know, Teepa Snow. Do you know Teepa Snow?
No.
Teepa Snow there's a lot of training in this field for people who work in this field, and her primary focus is teaching the yes anding of care. And one of her videos we saw is a perfect example. She puts herself in a conference room or a small conference room of a senior living, and a woman walks in and she says, this person has been a maid before. The woman walks in with a brush and whacks the bottom of chairs. and it happened in real time. And you can say, stop it. Or what Tipa did said, oh, wow, you're terrific job cleaning. This is the last chair. And she finishes, good job. You've cleaned all these chairs. Now let's go have lunch. It's the difference between no, stop it, and accepting the moment that this person thinks they're cleaning up because there's another, help me, kind of senior care living. It's the Montessori for senior living, where they're applying the Montessori techniques to memory care.
Okay.
Now, Montessori, as I understand it, in education for young people, is they see young people's natural talents, and try to use them to help educate them. They're athletic, or if they're good at numbers first. And Montessori for senior care, they learn the person's history. And I performed at one of these senior living places once, and they said, if you come to our memory care, we'll put you in charge of the theatrical department.
Well, it's funny because with my mom, because we had to put her in memory care, she was already, by the time she quote unquote got diagnosed, she was in moderate to severe. If they came and they said, hey, Pat, do you want to play bingo? She'd say no. But if they came in and they said, Pat, we really need your help. Can you help us set this up? She would be right there. Sure, I'll come help you, because that was her nature, and that worked for it.
Perfect.
Yeah. Instead of fighting with her, that's what. And then she loved it. She felt like she was helping. All right.
Communication is the hardest thing with this disease, I think. And as much as you think you're listening, or you can do this, or you can do that, if it comes at the wrong time, you as the person that is the care person is exhausted, or something happens. This is when you hear these kinds of things happen the most, that you just want to stop it. And why can't he understand this, that, and the other? And I seem to call a lot of things it. Do you see it? And now I am learning, but he told me. I don't know what the word it means. Can you describe it? So we're still at a stage where he can tell me, which is wonderful.
Yes.
But I didn't know that. I just talk like I normally talk. And so I think that's something that we as care people have to think about. Is there another way to say it? And I don't know if you had that experience also.
Yeah, I did. I realized my mom didn't know what certain words were or that, and I would try to get her to try to explain it to me, or like try to figure it out. And then at certain points, I just went with her. If she said this was blue and it was red, I'd say, oh yeah, it's blue. Because at a certain point, after a while, I was like, why argue with her? Why aggravate her? Because quite frankly, 5 minutes later, she wasn't going to remember what she did anyway. So, it did teach me to be in that present moment with her. It took a while before I could understand that, but then it helped, because I ended up being that person when she got really, really agitated or upset. She would like grab my hand and be like, please don't leave me. Please help me, and I would. With it, but it does take a long time to figure out that communication, so that you're giving that person that dignity that they need, and also understanding and not agitating them, and begin to understand what it is. It's a very complicated disease. It really is. Yes. You also talk about anticipatory grief, or dealing with loss and bad news. What would you say to somebody who is, possibly getting these diagnoses? What would you say to them?
Well, anticipatory grief came up in my book I talk about for a bit about our first round, and it sounds odd, but we've been gifted, if you want to use that word, in retrospect, it is. I mean, it's certainly helpful now. But having gone through Susan's breast cancer, I was having to anticipate her passing,
Mm-hmm.
and I use the word mainly in that regard, and how to both understanding what that is. And I walked up to the abyss. I mean, she was supposed to die and got close. Now, in this disease, I don't know because we're on different sides of it, whether but there is something formally known as anticipatory grief. It is getting ready to lose someone you love or lose anything that you love, but to lose your partner. And then what's complicated in this disease is, and I appreciate this, and this is not small. Susan was always Susan. When Susan was going through her illness,
Mm-hmm.
and I was her caregiver. He was a woman I always loved. I met, and I wanted to be there, and I wanted to help her the best I could. I'm becoming someone else.
Yeah.
She's losing me before I actually die in some ways. And
Yeah.
that complicates the role of the care person. And I haven't seen too many of them, but I'm sure there are stories of people who just can't do it. I remember now the story I have about this. I'll be quick, but we were at a funeral where someone's husband passed away after having dementia or Alzheimer's. And they were friends, and we had known both of them. And we were in the room, and I overheard the wife tell a friend, he wanted to live so badly. He tried to scoot out of the house on his bottom to go outside. And then she said, I'm so glad he's dead.
Mm.
And it was such a heartbreaking thing to listen to, but I understood it. And I think for people to hear that happens, that does happen. And so I was a care partner for Susan with a terminal diagnosis, and she was always Susan.
Mm-hmm.
She was always the woman I married and loved. I may become someone entirely different. And that's true for many people. You don't choose your parents, but even so, the temptation to leave, to exit, and to be free of that, and certainly in marital circumstances where there is no legal obligations, there, there are ethical issues here too, and I believe the requirement is to make sure your parent or your spouse is cared for. It may be necessary to not be in the room all the time or to live together.
It is. It is difficult. When you lose them twice because, like I said, my mom didn't know who I was. She just thought I was this really nice girl that came to visit her. So, I mean, it hurt, but after a while, I don't want to say I got used to it, but it didn't bother me as much, for it. So I did lose her that way first, even though physically she was there, and then you lose it again when when they actually die. So that part is hard, but I do appreciate the fact that I did learn from her to be in that moment with her, because at least I got to experience that with her, for it, because I do think that this disease teaches you to be right in that moment, because that's the only moment that you have with it.
Yes, and it's not. And I just want to acknowledge I know it's not easy, and therefore, and we're still at that phase, by the way, where we work hard at not going into the ditch. I don't know if that's the right way to say it. We talk about it a lot. It is so easy to feel sorry, to get sad, to give up in some ways. some of the worst things we could do is just sit in front of the TV and watch and don't get out there, don't work anything.
Mm-hmm.
Or, doing my play, the work around making it happen is not small.
No, not at all. And
It preoccupies me.
you're on the East Coast, right, for your play?
Yeah, yes. But we've been to San Francisco and LA and
Okay.
Colorado. But so I'm sort of lost the point I was going about. Lost my train of thought.
Well, that's okay. That's okay.
But then we talk about it. So we have to be conscious and aware about how we're going to do well and be very specific. How are we going to be happy? What can we do to, we're blessed that we have 2 adult children and they support us, and we have grandchildren and they're all there. We're not isolated from them. And so we're blessed with all that. But it is easy to close in.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we have to, and it's very important not to be isolated.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to be moving into a senior living place just about a year from now because they're building it.
Oh, okay.
But in part, even us who be very involved in our community, and we have a son who is a politician and he's well known. He's in the Virginia State Legislature.
Okay.
And we're feeling isolated. And because there is, I don't know if you saw it too, but there is a sense that people tend not to want to be around it.
Yeah.
Around us. And they're, I would perform someplace at a senior living. So I'm looking at Susan because I think she'll remember it, where a couple came up to us and said, my husband has dementia now. We just joined, but nobody wants to sit with us anymore.
I think because people don't understand it and they get scared of it and they don't realize that the person's still in there. It might be communicated differently, but they're still there. So
and they have gifts to offer us.
Yes.
Their mere presence is helpful, but it is an interesting. We're learning as we live it.
Yes, definitely. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. So you have your website is dementiaman.com, correct? So people could see where your play is. They can get your book off of Amazon. It's a very good read. So if you have had anybody that has had this disease or is going through it, it definitely gives you that perspective for it.
Breaking news.
Yes.
I'm beginning to, and we'll have it happen later this month. I was reluctant to do it before, but we'll do a performance over Zoom of the play.
Okay.
Provided that on the other end, people have somebody in the room with them that there's a lot of suicidal ideation.
Mm-hmm.
There are people who argue life with this disease is not worth living, and there is an option to go to Switzerland and stuff like that. And I don't want that. I don't want people who are not in a group with somebody to help them with it. But we will offer it over Zoom now, so you don't have to fly us out to.
Okay. That's on the website, dementiaman.com. You also have a lot of wonderful resources in this book as well, too. So thank you so much for joining us. This has been so enlightening, very informative.
Well, thank you, Patty.
Thank you. So I hope you've all enjoyed this. Hope you enjoyed your cup of coffee, your cup of tea, or your glass of wine, and just know that you're not alone. Leave us a review, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and enjoy. Please come again and enjoy another episode of Patty's Place.